My son-in-law pushed me under a taxi. The driver slammed on the brakes and stopped 3 inches away from me. I tore my knees, and he just ran away as if nothing had happened. But when he came home, I was waiting for him, with evidence of his betrayal. "The show is about to begin," I said, and now his lies and greed will turn against him. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The day had been productive. I'd spent the morning at Marcus's office getting my will updated, watching him stamp and notarize each page with that satisfying thunk of official business completed. The folder sat heavy under my arm as I turned my key in the front door, already thinking about the sandwich I'd make for lunch. Then I heard the shouting. Clyde's voice tore through my house like broken glass, sharp, aggressive, the kind of sound that makes your shoulders tense before your brain catches up. I froze with my coat half off, the folder slipping in my grip. I moved toward the living room. Each step revealed more of the scene, like a curtain being pulled back on something I wasn't supposed to see. Rebecca was crying. Not the quiet, dignified tears of someone who wants privacy, but the kind that comes with mascara streaks and a trembling chin. She stood near the sofa, hands clasped in front of her like a child waiting to be scolded. Credit card statements covered the coffee table, scattered and accusing. Clyde loomed over her, not touching, but close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. His shoulders were squared, his finger jabbing the air between them. $300 at that boutique? His voice dripped contempt. For what, Rebecca? We're not made of money. Unlike your father, some of us actually have to work for a living. The dig landed exactly where he intended. Rebecca flinched. I stepped into the doorway. That's enough, Clyde. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but it cut through his tirade. He turned slowly, deliberately, like a man who'd been interrupted during important business. The anger on his face shifted into something colder. Calculation. This doesn't concern you, old man. He didn't shout. That would have been easier to dismiss. Instead, his tone was measured, almost reasonable, which made the words sharper. This is between my wife and me. Maybe you should spend less time interfering and more time thinking about whether this house is really practical for someone your age. Assisted living has programs, you know. The air in the room changed. Rebecca's breath hitched. I'd tolerated Clyde for 3 years. Tolerated his condescending remarks at Sunday dinners, his way of speaking about me like I wasn't there, his habit of checking his watch whenever I spoke. I'd done it for Rebecca because she'd chosen him, and I respected her choice even when I disagreed with it. But this was different. This was a threat wrapped in concern. Lower your voice, I said. Whatever this is about, it can be discussed without shouting. Clyde's jaw tightened. He glanced at his watch, a nervous tell I'd noticed before but never understood until now. A man under pressure, a man running out of time. Dad, please. Rebecca's voice broke. She stepped between us, one hand reaching toward her husband, the other gesturing at me to stay back. Just go. You're making it worse. Clyde's under a lot of stress at work. He doesn't mean it. The defense came automatically, like she'd practiced it. Like this wasn't the first time she'd had to smooth things over. Clyde's expression softened when he looked at her, a performance of patience. Thank you, honey. Your father doesn't understand the pressure we're under. He walked past me toward the hallway, shoulders squared, taking his time, making sure I understood this was his choice to leave, not mine to dismiss him. Rebecca hurried after him, whispering apologies I couldn't quite hear. I stood alone in the living room, surrounded by scattered papers and the echo of accusations. The folder with my will felt heavier now. The house settled into uneasy quiet as evening crept in. I made dinner I didn't taste, washed dishes I didn't remember dirtying. Rebecca and Clyde stayed in their room, the guest room I'd converted for them when they'd moved in 6 months ago after Clyde lost his previous apartment. Temporary, they'd said. It hadn't been. Around 11, I gave up pretending I could sleep. I sat on my bed, still dressed, staring at the will folder I'd left on the nightstand. That's when I heard his voice through the wall. Our bedrooms shared a wall. The house was old, built when people valued space over privacy. I'd never paid attention to it before, never needed to. Now, Clyde's voice filtered through like smoke under a door. I know what I owe you. The timeline moved up. Yes, I understand. I stood slowly, moved closer to the wall. Need to resolve this situation sooner. The old man's becoming a problem. I have a plan. my hand found the will folder, gripped it until the edges bent. Trust me, it'll look natural. People his age, accidents happen. The conversation continued, but blood was rushing in my ears. I opened my bedside drawer with trembling fingers, found the small notebook I used for grocery lists. I began writing down everything I could remember, every phrase that had slipped through the wall. When silence finally returned, I sat on the edge of my bed with the notebook in one hand and my phone in the other. I scrolled through my contacts, stopped at a name I hadn't called in 8 months. Detective Sarah Chen. We'd worked together years ago when I was still investigating insurance fraud. My thumb hovered over her name. Not yet. If I called now, with only fragments of an overheard conversation, I'd sound paranoid. An old man jumping at shadows. I needed more. Evidence, documentation, the kind of proof that couldn't be dismissed. I set the phone down and opened the will folder again. Clyde didn't know I'd updated it. Didn't know that if something happened to me, everything would be tied up in a trust that he couldn't touch. The house, the savings, all of it protected. But that wouldn't stop him if he was desperate enough. The realization settled over me like winter cold. I wasn't just an inconvenience to my son-in-law. I was a target. And tomorrow, I'd start building the case that might save my life. The next morning arrived too soon. I woke in the same position I'd fallen asleep, sitting upright on my bed, notebook still open beside me. The words I'd written in the dark now visible in the harsh daylight. My back ached. My mouth tasted stale. I'd barely slept. The house was already empty when I made it to the kitchen. Rebecca and Clyde left early on weekdays, him to whatever job he claimed to have downtown, her to the salon where she worked part-time. Their absence should have been relief. Instead, the quiet felt ominous, like the pause before thunder. I made coffee I didn't want and scrambled eggs I couldn't finish. My mind kept circling back to those words through the wall. It'll look natural. Accidents happen. I needed information. Real, solid information about who Clyde Morris actually was, what he owed, and to whom. But I couldn't investigate openly. One wrong move, and he'd know I was onto him. I dressed carefully, pressed slacks, button-down shirt, the navy jacket I wore to church, looking presentable, unremarkable. Just an old man running errands on a Wednesday morning. The dry cleaner was 3 blocks away. I'd been using Chen's laundry for 15 years, long enough that Mrs. Chen knew my preferences without asking. I handed her my ticket and waited while she retrieved my shirts from the back. That's when I saw Linda Vasquez near the alterations counter. We'd met at a neighborhood association meeting 2 years ago. She worked as a paralegal at Morrison & Kent, the law firm 2 buildings down from Cloyd's supposed office. We'd exchanged pleasantries at occasional community events, nothing more. Emmett. She smiled, but something in her expression seemed strained. How are you? Can't complain, I said. Yourself? Busy season at the firm. She glanced at the clerk, then back at me. Actually, Emmett, I probably shouldn't say this. I waited, kept my expression neutral, encouraging, without seeming eager. She lowered her voice. I saw Clyde last week. Your son-in-law, right? Tuesday evening at Bella Nade. He was with a young woman, very young, and they weren't discussing business, if you know what I mean. The information landed like a puzzle piece I hadn't known was missing. Which day was this? Last Tuesday, around 8. I was there with clients from the firm. She touched my arm briefly. I'm sorry. I debated whether to mention it, but if it were my family... I appreciate you telling me, I said, keeping my tone even. Do you remember anything else? What they were doing? He had his hand on hers across the table. They were laughing, very comfortable with each other. Linda shifted her dry cleaning bag. I only mention it because, well, Rebecca deserves better. Yes, I agreed quietly. She does. Mrs. Chen called my name. I collected my shirts, thanked Linda again, and stepped back into the morning sunlight. Another piece, financial pressure, an affair, a father-in-law standing between him and money. The picture was getting clearer, and I didn't like what I was seeing. I drove home slowly, my mind working through implications. An affair meant additional expenses, secret expenses, the kind that create desperate situations, the kind that make men take risks they'd normally avoid. The afternoon crawled past. I sat in my reading chair, book open but unread, listening for sounds that never came. When I finally heard the front door open around 6, I'd already decided not to mention Linda's information. Not yet. I needed to see what Clyde would do next. Rebecca appeared in the living room doorway. "Dad, I'm making chicken for dinner, your favorite." Her smile was apologetic, trying to smooth over yesterday's scene without acknowledging it directly. "That sounds nice, sweetheart." Clyde arrived 20 minutes later. I heard his briefcase hit the hall table, heard him greeting Rebecca in the kitchen, then footsteps approaching. He appeared with a folder under his arm, his expression carefully neutral, professional. "Emmett, do you have a minute? I brought home some paperwork I need to handle." We sat at the dining table. He spread out several official-looking documents, turned them so they faced me. "These are insurance forms for the house," he said smoothly. "Standard procedure, just confirms the property is properly protected. Rebecca, honey, could you witness these? Just need your signature here and here." Rebecca emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She reached for the pen he offered. "Wait." I pulled the papers toward me. "Let me see those first." I read slowly, carefully, the way I'd been trained to read documents during my insurance days. Check the fine print. Look for the terms that contradict the summary. The words jumped out at me. Power of attorney, medical decisions, financial authority, complete control. "This isn't insurance paperwork, Clyde." I looked up at him. "This is power of attorney. This would give you complete control over my assets and medical decisions." Rebecca's hand froze halfway to the paper. "What?" Clyde's jaw tightened. "It's just a precaution. At your age—" "At my age," I interrupted quietly, "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs, and I certainly don't need someone managing them who can't be honest about what he's asking me to sign." The mask cracked. Not completely, but enough that I saw what lived behind it. Cold calculation, barely contained rage. "You're making a big mistake, old man." His voice dropped low, intimate, threatening. "A very big mistake. You think you're protecting something, but you're just making this harder on everyone, especially yourself." He stood, gathered the papers with sharp, angry movements, and walked out. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. Rebecca stared at the empty doorway. "Dad, he said it was just insurance. Why would he— Do you think he made a mistake? Maybe the lawyer gave him the wrong papers." The hope in her voice broke something in me. She wanted so badly to believe in him. "Maybe," I lied gently. "Why don't you finish dinner? I'm sure he'll be back soon." But I knew he wouldn't. Not tonight. After Rebecca went to bed, alone, Clyde's car never returned. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook. The overhead light hummed. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. I wrote, "Marcus, notary, done, financial check, tomorrow, evidence, needed." Below that, Linda's information, Bella Nate, Tuesday young woman, POA attempt, failed, a phone conversation, recorded in notes. And finally, timeline accelerating, need to move faster. Tomorrow, I'd visit James Patterson, my old colleague from Metropolitan Insurance. He'd retired 2 years before me, but still had access to databases, still knew how to pull financial records without raising flags. Tomorrow, I'd make my first move. I closed the notebook and sat in the silent kitchen, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere in this city, Clyde was making his own plans, adjusting his timeline now that I'd blocked his legal route. The game had started. I just hoped I was fast enough to win it. The following morning, I made the call I'd been planning since I closed that notebook at the kitchen table. Dave Hutchinson answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the gravel of a man who'd smoked for 40 years before finally quitting. "Emmett Rice. Now that's a name from the past." "I need a favor, Dave. The kind we used to do in the old days." A pause. I heard him shift in his chair. Could picture him in that cluttered home office where he'd spent his retirement supposedly consulting, but mostly playing online poker. "What kind of favor are we talking about?" "Financial background check, unofficial, someone close to my family." "How close?" "My son-in-law." Another pause, longer this time. "Must be serious if you're calling me." "It is." "Coffee at Sunrise Grind, 1 hour, come alone." By mid-morning, I was sitting across from Dave in a booth at the back of the coffee shop, watching him slide a manila envelope across the scarred table. He'd aged since I'd last seen him, more gray, deeper lines around his eyes, but those eyes still had the sharp focus of a man who'd spent decades spotting insurance fraud. You were right to be concerned. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Your son-in-law owes $85,000 to Vincent Collaro. You remember that name from the old fraud cases? I did. Collaro wasn't a legitimate creditor. He was the kind of man who broke knees first and asked questions later. This isn't the kind of debt you walk away from, Dave continued. Men like Collaro don't do payment plans. I opened the envelope, studied the documents inside. Bank statements showed a pattern of desperation. Large cash withdrawals, casino markers, bounced checks. The timeline was clear. Clyde had been hemorrhaging money for at least 8 months. How bad is it? I asked. Specifically. Bad enough that he's desperate. Bad enough to do something stupid. I looked up. How recent are these debts? The Collaro loan, 3 months old, due 2 weeks ago. He hasn't made a single payment. Who else knows you pulled these? Nobody. I used a backdoor access from my consulting work. This conversation never happened. He tapped the envelope. Whatever you're planning, be careful. A man this deep doesn't think straight. We parted with a handshake that felt like goodbye. Dave disappeared into the Vegas morning while I tucked the envelope inside my jacket. My car was in the shop. Timing belt finally gave out. So I walked home. The mid-morning heat hit like opening an oven door, but I welcomed it. The physical discomfort kept me focused. I passed the Golden Nugget, thinking about Clyde feeding money into slot machines while telling Rebecca they needed to budget. Past families taking photos, thinking about how my daughter had chosen this man. Past a police station, wondering if they'd believe an old man's suspicions. The envelope felt heavy against my ribs. Evidence of financial ruin, but not proof of intent. Not yet. I was 3 blocks from home when I heard the car slow beside me. Emmett! Clyde's voice, cheerful and bright. What are you doing walking in this heat? Get in. I'll drive you home. His Audi Q5 gleamed silver in the sunlight, windows tinted dark. I couldn't see his expression until he leaned over to unlock the passenger door, and then I saw only a smile, wide, friendly, seemingly genuine. Every instinct screamed danger, but refusing would show fear, and I couldn't afford to reveal that I knew anything. I got in. The air conditioning hit like a blast of winter. Clyde pulled back into traffic, one hand on the wheel, the other draped casually over the center console. Running errands? Just walking. Doctor says I need the exercise. In this heat? You'll give yourself a stroke. He laughed, but there was an edge to it. You know, we should talk about your estate planning. You've updated your will recently, right? My guard snapped up. Why do you ask? Just thinking about the future. You're, 62? Anything could happen. Accidents? Health issues? His fingers drummed the steering wheel. Everything goes to Rebecca, I assume? I've made appropriate arrangements. That's not really an answer. His tone shifted, became sharper. See, the thing is, Emmett, families should be transparent about these things. Rebecca's my wife. I have a right to know what happens if something happens to you. We turned onto my street. My house was visible 3 blocks down. Everything is handled properly, I said carefully. That's what I thought. You've always been so careful, haven't you? So prepared. He pulled to the curb in front of my house, put the car in park. But you can't prepare for everything? Something in his voice made me look at him. His smile was gone. His eyes were cold, calculating. We both got out. The sidewalk was busy. Tourists headed toward Fremont Street, workers on lunch breaks, locals window shopping, people everywhere, safety in numbers. I stepped toward my front walk, relieved to escape the tension of that car. Then Clyde's hand hit my back. Not a touch, not a steadying grip. A violent, brutal shove with his full body weight behind it. My feet left the curb. I pitched forward. The street rushed up at me. Somewhere, a horn blared. Time stretched like taffy. I saw everything in crystalline detail. The taxi, yellow and chrome, bearing down. The driver's face, eyes widening in horror. The bumper, getting closer. My palms hit the asphalt first, then my knees. The impact shot pain up my arms. I heard the screech of brakes, smelled burning rubber. The taxi stopped 3 inches from my face, 3 inches between me and death. I could see my reflection in the chrome bumper, distorted and wavering. Then, voices, running footsteps, hands reaching down. The world came back in a rush of sound and sensation. I looked around for Clyde. His Audi was pulling away a block down, merging into traffic. He hadn't even parked. He'd pushed me and driven away. The taxi driver was out of his car, screaming, "I didn't see you! Are you okay? Oh my God!" A woman knelt beside me. "Don't move. Someone call 911. No." My voice came out steady despite the roaring in my ears. "I'm fine. I tripped." Everything happened in seconds, but those seconds felt like hours. The taxi's bumper filled my vision, close enough to see the scratches in the chrome, close enough to feel heat radiating from the engine. My breath fogged the metal. Then came the pain. My palms burned where asphalt had torn the skin. My knees throbbed, warm liquid soaking through my khakis. I knew without looking that I was bleeding. The taxi driver stood over me, hands in his hair. "I didn't see you. 1 second the street was clear, then you were just there. Are you hurt? Please, I need to call someone." A crowd formed, strangers with concerned faces, pulling out phones, reaching to help me stand. Their voices overlapped into noise. "Did that car hit you? Someone call an ambulance. Can you move your legs?" I pushed myself up slowly, testing each joint. Everything worked, painful but functional. A young man already had his phone out, finger poised over the screen. "It's okay." I forced my voice to sound calm, reassuring. "Everyone relax. I lost my balance." The driver stopped in time. "There's no problem here." The taxi driver grabbed my arm, steadying me. "You're bleeding, your hands and knees. You need to go to the emergency room." "I've had worse. I just need to get home and clean up." I looked at each concerned face, selling the lie. "But thank you, really. You're all very kind." A woman pressed tissues into my hand. "At least let someone drive you. You shouldn't walk like this." The taxi driver jumped at that. "I'll take you. Please, it's the least I can do. I almost—" His voice broke. "You did nothing wrong," I said, and meant it. "You stopped in time. You saved me." The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly. A few people gave me their numbers in case I needed witnesses for insurance purposes. I took them, knowing I'd never call. The taxi driver, his nameplate read Victor Ramos, opened the back door for me like I was fragile glass. I sank into the seat, and he drove with exaggerated care, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. "Where do you live?" I gave him my address. He pulled into traffic while I sat in the back, watching my city pass by. The tissues in my hand were already soaked red. Blood dripped onto my torn khakis, leaving dark spots. My hands were shaking, not from shock, from rage. Clyde had pushed me into traffic, calculated, deliberate murder disguised as an accident. If Victor hadn't braked in time, I'd be dead. Clyde would have circled back, played the horrified son-in-law. I stepped away for just a moment. He must have stumbled. But I wasn't dead, and now the gloves were off. I pulled out my phone with bloody, trembling fingers and dialed Marcus Delroy. "Marcus, it's Emmett Rice. I need you to come to my house tonight with your notary supplies. There are documents I need to execute immediately." A pause. Marcus was professional enough not to ask unnecessary questions, but smart enough to hear urgency. "Is everything all right?" "Everything will be. Can you be here by 8? "I'll be there at 7:30. "Thank you." Victor kept apologizing. I keep thinking, what if I hadn't braked in time? What if— "But you did," I interrupted, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. "You reacted perfectly. That split-second decision. You saved my life. I won't forget that." The words were heavier than he knew. I'd meant them as reassurance, but they were also truth. Victor Ramos was now part of this story, a witness who didn't realize what he'd witnessed. We pulled into my driveway. The house was dark. Rebecca and Clyde weren't home yet. Good. I needed time. "Please," Victor said as I reached for the door, "let me pay for a doctor visit. Or at least, you've done enough, more than enough." I pulled out my wallet, but he waved it away. "No charge, just please take care of yourself." I watched his taxi disappear down the street, then limped to my front door. My keys felt heavy in my torn hands. Inside, the house was silent, watching. I didn't stop to clean my wounds, not yet. Instead, I went straight to my study, pulled out the manila envelope Dave had given me, laid it on the desk next to the will documents Marcus had notarized 2 days ago, added the insurance paperwork from my filing cabinet, policies Clyde didn't know existed, beneficiaries he'd never guessed. I opened my desk drawer and retrieved a small digital recorder I had used for depositions years ago. Checked the battery, full charge. The pieces were falling into place. Clyde thought he was playing chess while I was still learning the rules. He was wrong. I'd been playing this game since before he was born. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Running late. Having dinner with Clyde. Don't wait up. I texted back. No problem. See you tomorrow. Love you. That bought me more time. Marcus would be here in 90 minutes. By the time Clyde came home, expecting to find his father-in-law dead or hospitalized, he'd walk into a very different scenario. I finally allowed myself to examine my injuries. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but my palms looked like raw hamburger. My knees weren't much better. I cleaned them in the bathroom, wincing as hydrogen peroxide foamed in the wounds, bandaged them as best I could. In the mirror, I looked like what I was, a man who'd narrowly escaped death. But my eyes were clear, focused. I'd crossed a line when I hit that pavement. The careful, cautious man who'd tolerated Clyde's insults for his daughter's sake was gone. What remained was someone Clyde hadn't counted on, someone who'd spent 30 years investigating fraud, lies, and people who thought they were cleverer than they were. Back in my study, I laid out the documents in careful order. Dave's financial records here, my will there. The insurance policies arranged like a hand of cards. The recorder positioned where I could reach it easily. I was reviewing the final document when I heard tires on gravel. Through the window, I saw Clyde's Audi pulling into the driveway. He was home. I stood slowly, testing my injured knees. They held. I moved to the living room, positioned myself in my reading chair where I could see the front door. The recorder was in my pocket, already running. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. Clyde walked in and froze when he saw me. His face cycled through emotions in rapid succession. Shock, confusion, then something that might have been fear. Emmett, you're home. Where else would I be? I kept my voice neutral, conversational. Did you think I'd be somewhere else? His eyes flicked to my bandaged hands, my torn pants. Understanding dawned. What happened to you? I had an accident earlier today. You remember? You were there. The silence stretched between us like a razor wire. Clyde's mask was slipping. I could see him calculating, weighing options, deciding how to play this. I don't know what you mean. Yes, I said quietly. You do. Marcus's taillights disappeared down the street just as I heard the key turn in the lock. Perfect timing. I'd positioned myself in the armchair facing the entryway. Documents arranged on the coffee table like evidence at trial. The recorder in my pocket was running. My bandaged knees were visible beneath rolled-up pant legs, silent testimony to what Clyde had tried to do. The door opened. Clyde stepped inside, expecting darkness, silence, maybe Rebecca crying. Instead, every lamp in the living room blazed. I sat waiting, hands folded across my stomach, watching him. His keys slipped from his fingers, clattered on the hardwood. He grabbed the doorframe for support. Emmett, his voice came out strangled. You're home. Did you think I'd be somewhere else? I kept my tone conversational. Where exactly did you expect me to be? Clyde? Hospital? Morgue? The blood drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. I gave you a ride earlier. You must have hit your head when you... Sit down. I didn't raise my voice. The quiet command was more effective than shouting. He moved like a puppet with tangled strings, stumbling to the couch across from me. Sat, stood, sat again. Sweat appeared on his forehead, despite the air conditioning. Let me tell you what I know. I picked up the first document, held it so he could see the letterhead. $85,000 to Vincent Colero, 3 months overdue. Colero doesn't do payment plans, does he? He breaks knees. Clyde's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I set that paper down, picked up another. Your affair with Julia Stevens. I have photographs, dates. The restaurant bills you put on credit cards you told Rebecca were for client meetings. You can't prove, and the money you've been washing through client trust accounts. I tapped a bank statement. See these transactions? Client deposits that never made it to clients, transferred to your personal accounts, then out again. The State Bar would find this fascinating. He shot to his feet. You're just a paranoid old man making accusations? Rebecca will never believe. Sit. Down. He sat. I slid a fresh document across the table. While you were out attempting murder this evening, I was busy too. This house now belongs to Rebecca. Irrevocable trust, executed tonight, notarized. You can't touch it, can't sell it, can't mortgage it for cash to pay Calaro. His hand trembled as he picked up the paper, read it again. But here's the interesting part. I produced another document. This clause here specifies that if I die under suspicious circumstances, accidents, falls, sudden illness, everything triggers an automatic investigation. Financial records frozen, police involvement mandatory. Every aspect of your life examined by people who know how to find things. The paper fell from his hands. You think you're so smart, he said, but his voice cracked. You think you've won. You haven't proven anything. This is all circumstantial. I'll fight this. With what money, Clyde? With what law license? I leaned forward, wincing as my injured knees protested. Here's what happens next. Tomorrow morning, someone files a complaint with the state bar. Detailed, documented, anonymous. Your license gets suspended pending investigation. You lose your income. Calaro gets impatient. And I keep watching, keep documenting, keep protecting my daughter from the mistake she married. He stood again, backing toward the door. You'll regret this. You think you can threaten me? You'll what? I stayed seated, calm. Kill me? You already tried. It didn't work. Now you're exposed, cornered, and desperate. The only question is how much more damage you'll do before this ends. His face cycled through emotions. Rage, fear, calculation. Finally settled on something ugly. This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. You made a mistake, Clyde. You shouldn't have pushed me under that taxi. Now we both live with the consequences. He grabbed his keys from where they'd fallen, fumbled with the door, and left. The slam echoed through the house. I sat in the darkness. I'd turned off the lamps while he fumbled with his exit, and listened to his Audi roar out of the driveway. My hands were shaking now that it was over, adrenaline catching up. But beneath the shaking was something else, satisfaction. The first phase was complete. I reached into my pocket and stopped the recorder. Tomorrow, I'd make copies. Store them somewhere safe. Insurance. Through the wall, I heard nothing. Rebecca must still be out. Good. She didn't need to know about tonight's confrontation. Not yet. I stood slowly, testing my knees. They held. Made my way to the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't drink. The house felt different now. Like a chessboard mid-game, pieces in motion, outcome uncertain, but trajectory clear. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Documents filed in safe deposit box. Key mailed to your P.O. box. Sleep well. I texted back. Thank you. Sleep well. That was unlikely, but I'd sleep satisfied, knowing that tomorrow Clyde's world would start collapsing in earnest. I checked the locks, turned off the lights, and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. Each step reminded me of the taxi's bumper, 3 inches from my face, 3 inches between life and death. Clyde had given me that gift without knowing it. He'd freed me from doubt, from mercy, from any lingering concern about going too far. You can't go too far against someone who tried to murder you. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, planning tomorrow's moves. The state bar complaint would go in first thing, anonymous, detailed, devastating. By sunset tomorrow, Clyde Morris would understand what real consequences felt like. The thought let me finally close my eyes. Morning came with hard light through the windows, the kind that shows every dust mote and flaw. My body protested as I sat up, knees throbbing, palms stiff where skin had torn away. I rewrapped the bandages carefully, pulled on dark slacks that hid the damage. The house was silent. Clyde and Rebecca's door was closed. Whether they were sleeping or he was pretending to sleep while panic ate him alive, I didn't know and didn't care. I moved quietly downstairs, collected the documents I'd prepared yesterday into my briefcase, left a note on the kitchen counter, running errands, back this afternoon. The vagueness was intentional. Let Clyde wonder. Let him panic about where I'd gone and what I was doing. My car started quietly. I backed out of the driveway as the first real sunlight hit the street. The State Bar of Nevada offices occupied a modern building downtown, all glass and steel reflecting the desert sky. I found parking, fed the meter enough for 2 hours, though I'd only need 30 minutes, and walked inside. The lobby was professional, quiet. A receptionist directed me to the 3rd floor, disciplinary proceedings. I took the elevator up. The clerk who helped me was maybe 30, efficient, wearing glasses that kept sliding down her nose. "How can I help you?" "I need to file a formal complaint against an attorney." She produced a form. "Name of the attorney?" "Clyde Morris. License number." I provided it from memory. Her fingers moved across her keyboard. Nature of the complaint? Misuse of client trust accounts, money laundering, ethical violations. I slid the manila envelope across her desk. Documentation is included. Bank records, transaction histories, dates, amounts. Everything's there. She opened the envelope, scanned the contents. Her eyebrows rose. "This is quite detailed. The evidence is clear. Someone needs to review it. The disciplinary board reviews all complaints within 48 hours. If the allegations are substantiated and serious, which these appear to be, the attorney's license can be suspended pending full investigation." How long does a full investigation typically take? Weeks to months, depending on complexity. She stamped the form, filed the documents. "You'll receive updates at this email address." I had provided a temporary email account created that morning, untraceable to me. "Yes. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take ethical violations very seriously." I left the building feeling lighter despite my injuries. 2 days. Clyde had 2 days before official notification arrived and his world imploded. Back home, I found my note still on the counter, undisturbed. Clyde's door remained closed. I went to my study, filed away copies of everything I'd submitted, and waited. My phone stayed off. If Clyde tried to call, he'd get voicemail. The not knowing would eat at him worse than any confrontation. Around noon, I heard movement upstairs. Footsteps. Clyde's voice muffled through walls, talking to someone, probably on the phone. His tone carried anxiety even through the floorboards. I made myself a sandwich I barely tasted, sat in my armchair with a book I didn't read, and waited. The knock came at 2:15. I watched through the window as Clyde opened the front door to a courier, signed for an envelope. The courier left. Clyde stood in the doorway staring at the State Bar logo in the upper left corner. His hands were shaking as he opened it. I couldn't see his face, but I watched his body language tell the story. The way he staggered backward, how he sat heavily on the couch, the paper falling from his hands, him retrieving it, reading again. My phone buzzed, Clyde calling. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello, Clyde?" "This is you." His voice was raw, breaking. "You filed a complaint. You destroyed my career. I'll prove you're lying. You can't do this to me." I pulled my car to the curb. I'd gone out for coffee, giving him time alone with his new reality. "Are you finished? Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand exactly what I've done. What you don't seem to understand is that you did this to yourself. You laundered money through your practice. You betrayed your client's trust. You tried to murder me yesterday. Every single consequence you're facing is one you earned. I'll fight this. I'll prove..." "You'll prove what? That the bank records are fabricated? That the transaction logs are false? Good luck with that." I kept my voice steady, conversational. "No license means no cases means no income. How will you pay Coloro? How will you pay your rent? Your car payment? That affair with Julia isn't cheap either, is it?" Silence. Heavy, breathing silence. "You should have thought about consequences before you pushed me under that taxi," I said quietly. "This is just the beginning, Clyde. You started this game. Now we're playing by my rules. You'll pay for this. I'll find a way to..." "To what? Kill me? You already tried. It didn't work." I paused. Let that sink in. "Here's what's going to happen next. You're going to sit in that house, my house, which you can't touch, and think about your choices. Think about the $85,000 you owe to a man who breaks bones. Think about Rebecca finding out who you really are. Think about all of it." I ended the call before he could respond. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun was starting its descent toward the mountains. Through the living room window, I could see Clyde sitting motionless on the couch, the suspension letter still in his hands. I took my time gathering my things, locking the car, walking to the door. Let him hear me coming. Let him dread what came next. When I entered, he looked up. Our eyes met. His face was pale, hollow. The letter trembled in his grip. "Suspended," he said. Just that one word. "Pending investigation," I added helpfully. "Could take months, but yes, suspended. No income, no way to make money. How much savings do you have? 2 weeks? 3? He didn't answer. Colaro's going to start asking questions soon. What will you tell him? That your father-in-law destroyed your career, so now you can't pay? I set my briefcase down, moved toward the stairs. Sleep well tonight, Clyde. Tomorrow brings new surprises. I climbed to my room, closed the door, and finally allowed myself to feel the satisfaction fully. Phase 1, survive the murder attempt, complete. Phase 2, destroy his career, complete. Phase 3 would begin tomorrow and the day after, and the day after that. Clyde thought he could push an old man into traffic and walk away. He was learning differently now. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Downstairs, I heard nothing. Clyde sitting in silence, probably, trying to figure out how his perfect murder plan had turned into his own destruction. The answer was simple. He'd underestimated his victim. People make that mistake. Assume age equals weakness. Assume quiet equals passive. Assume tolerance equals inability to fight back. Clyde was learning what I'd known for 62 years. Underestimating someone is the fastest way to lose to them. My phone buzzed. Rebecca. Working late again. Don't wait up. Love you. I texted back. Be safe. Love you too. She didn't know yet. About the suspension, the investigation, any of it. Soon she'd have to know. But not tonight. Tonight, Clyde could sit alone with his consequences and understand that this was just the beginning. The morning brought tension thick as fog. I woke to voices downstairs. Clyde's false cheerfulness cutting through the floorboards like a knife pretending to be a spoon. I dressed slowly, rewrapped my bandages. The injuries were healing, but standing too long still sent aches through my knees. I made my way downstairs, positioning myself in the kitchen, where I could hear everything through the thin wall separating it from the living room. Your father's been acting strangely, haven't you noticed? Clyde's voice carried that concerned tone people use when they're performing empathy. Yesterday he made these crazy accusations about me. People his age sometimes. Their minds slip. I poured coffee I didn't want, held the mug to keep my hands occupied. Dad has seemed stressed lately, Rebecca said, but her voice held uncertainty. But he's always been sharp. I don't think that's how it starts. Clyde cut her off gently. You don't want to see it because you love him, but we need to face reality. We need to talk about getting him evaluated. Maybe a care facility where professionals can monitor him properly. My jaw tightened. He was good at this. Very good. Weaponizing love, turning protection into doubt. The doorbell interrupted him mid-manipulation. I heard Rebecca's footsteps, the door opening, her thanking someone. Then silence, the kind that fills a room like water. I moved to the kitchen doorway, staying back in shadow. Rebecca stood in the living room, manila envelope open in her hands. Photos spread across her palms like playing cards. Her face had gone white. Rebecca, what? Clyde started. She walked to the coffee table, laid out the photographs one by one, methodically, each one a verdict. Clyde and a young woman at a restaurant, leaning close over wine. Clyde and the same woman entering a hotel, his hand on her lower back. More photos, more evidence. Then printed emails, intimate and planning futures that didn't include Rebecca. Who is she? Rebecca's voice was ice. Clyde grabbed for the photos. She pulled them back. Those aren't... Someone doctored. He was stammering, cycling through defenses. Your father sent these. Don't you see? He's trying to destroy our marriage. He's never liked me. This is all part of his paranoid. Who is she? Rebecca repeated, each word a hammer blow. Julia Stevens, I said quietly from the doorway. They've been seeing each other for 4 months. The Bellinot restaurant on your anniversary, interestingly enough. Clyde's face went from white to red. You! This is all you! You're destroying my life. No. I stepped into the room. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure Rebecca saw the truth. Rebecca was crying, but her voice stayed steady. Pack your things. Leave this house. This is my house, too. Clyde's desperation made him loud. You can't just kick me out. I have rights. I pulled the trust documents from where I'd kept them ready. Actually, no. This house belongs to me and Rebecca. It's held in irrevocable trust, properly executed and notarized. You're a guest here, Clyde, and you're no longer welcome. Rebecca took the documents, scanned them. Understanding flickered across her face. Her father had been protecting her long before she knew she needed protection. Get out! she said again. "You'll regret this." Clyde's voice cracked. "Both of you. I'll sue. I'll prove these photos are fake. You'll do nothing," I said quietly. "Because you have nothing. No license, no income, no leverage. You made your choices. Now live with them." He stared at me, and for a moment I saw what lived behind the mask. Pure hate, calculation, the face of someone who'd tried to kill me and failed. Then he broke, stormed to the bedroom. I heard drawers slamming, things breaking. 15 minutes later, he emerged with a suitcase, clothes stuffed in haphazardly. He stopped at the door, turned back. "This isn't over. You think you've won? You destroyed my career, my marriage, my life. I'll make you pay for this, old man." "Goodbye, Clyde." He left the door open. I closed it quietly after him, locked it, then moved to the window. Clyde sat in his Audi in the driveway, phone pressed to his ear. Even from inside, I could see his face was red, his free hand gesturing violently. The call lasted several minutes. When it ended, he threw the phone against the dashboard. Then he drove away, tires squealing. That call wasn't to Julia Stevens. I knew it in my bones. That was a call to someone who expected money, someone who didn't accept excuses. I turned from the window. Rebecca sat on the couch, surrounded by photographs of her husband's betrayal, tears running silent down her face. I sat beside her, didn't speak, just sat. After a while, she leaned against my shoulder. "How long have you known?" "A few days. Linda saw them together. I had it confirmed." "Why didn't you tell me immediately? Would you have believed me without proof?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, "No, I wouldn't have. I'm sorry, Dad. You have nothing to apologize for. You're not responsible for his choices. But I was responsible for mine. And I'd made the choice to dismantle Clyde Morris piece by piece until nothing remained but consequences. The first piece, his career, was gone. The second piece, his marriage, was gone. The third piece, his home, was gone. Only one piece remained, his safety. Somewhere in this city, Vincent Collaro was waiting for money Clyde couldn't pay, and desperate men make dangerous choices. I held my daughter while she cried and knew the endgame was approaching faster than I'd anticipated. The weekend arrived with unexpected quiet. Saturday morning, the house felt different, lighter somehow, despite Rebecca's grief. We sat at the kitchen table together, eating breakfast in comfortable silence, broken only by occasional questions. "How long had you been planning the trust?" she asked, stirring sugar into coffee. "Since the day I updated my will, before I even knew about the affair." I buttered toast I didn't want. "Something about Clyde always felt wrong. I wanted you protected." She nodded slowly. Didn't speak for a while. Then, "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. You're not responsible. I know, you keep saying that, but I still feel foolish. You feel human. That's different." We cleaned dishes together, normal, healing. The toxicity that had filled this house was gone, leaving space for us to breathe. Mid-morning, I was reading the newspaper, establishing normalcy, routine, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Mr. Rice?" The voice was rough, professional. Gravel scraped over concrete. "Hear you had some family troubles recently. My employer takes interest in his investments. Your son-in-law, he owes considerable money." I said nothing, waited. "Thought you'd want to know he's at Sunset Motel, Boulder Highway, room 117. Just in case that information becomes useful." "Who is this?" A low chuckle. "Let's just say we have mutual interests regarding Mr. Morris. Have a good day, sir." The line went dead. I sat motionless, phone in hand. Vincent Collaro's people. They'd found Clyde, and they wanted me to know they'd found him. Warning, courtesy, threat. I couldn't be certain, but the message was clear. They were watching. Everyone. I didn't tell Rebecca about the call. Didn't write down the address, though I wouldn't forget it. Sunset Motel, Boulder Highway. The kind of place people went when they'd run out of choices. Saturday afternoon, we watched a movie Rebecca picked. Something light, forgettable, normal father-daughter time, rebuilding what Clyde had tried to poison. Sunday arrived with church bells from down the street. Families heading out in Sunday clothes. Rebecca made pancakes. We ate slowly, talking about nothing important. Her students, my garden. Small things that mattered because they were ours. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, showed me the screen. I have to sell the car. I'm in real trouble. Serious trouble. No apology for the affair. No acknowledgement of his behavior. Just desperate need radiating through digital text. Rebecca's fingers hovered over the keyboard, started typing a response, stopped, deleted it, put the phone face down on the table. I don't know what to say to him. Do you want to help him? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know anymore. Part of me still... She trailed off. Despite everything, I don't want him hurt. Does that make me weak? It makes you kind, but kindness doesn't require self-destruction. She nodded, picked up her fork, set it down again. He made his choices. Yes, he did. Evening brought another text. Longer this time. Rebecca read it, then passed me her phone. Sold the Audi for almost nothing. Still not enough. Your father destroyed me. I hope you're happy. I did the math quickly. The Audi was worth $45,000 new, maybe $40,000 used in good condition. Clyde probably sold it for $28,000 in desperation. Cash, fast, no questions. And he still owed $85,000 to Colaro. $28,000 minus $85,000, left negative $57,000. The hole was too deep. No ladder long enough. He's blaming you, Rebecca said quietly. He's blaming everyone but himself. That's who he is, Rebecca. That's who he's always been. She took her phone back, stared at the message. Do you think he'll be okay? Despite everything, I don't want him. I don't know, I said honestly. He made his choices. Now he's living with consequences. That's not on you. But it was on me. Not the debt. That was Clyde's own doing. Not the affair or the gambling or the money laundering. Those were his choices. But I'd accelerated his collapse, destroyed his career, expelled him from his home, cut off every avenue of escape. I'd backed him into a corner where the only thing waiting was Vincent Colaro's people. That night, after Rebecca went to bed, I sat in my study with the lights off. The house settled around me, creaking in familiar places. Outside, Vegas glowed against the desert darkness. Somewhere out there, in room 117 of the Sunset Motel, Clyde Morris was probably sitting on a cheap mattress, staring at walls that had seen too much desperation. No job, no car, no money, no options. Just debt and dangerous people, and the knowledge that he'd lost everything. I'd pushed him to this edge. Not directly, his own choices had built the cliff, but I'd removed every handhold that might have saved him. Revenge felt different than I'd imagined. Not triumphant, just necessary. Like setting a broken bone, painful, but required for healing. My phone sat on the desk, dark and silent. I thought about the call from Colaro's people. They'd given me Clyde's location for a reason. What did they expect me to do with that information? Nothing, I decided. I'd done enough. Now I'd wait and see what Clyde did when cornered. Desperate men are dangerous men. I'd learned that the day he pushed me into traffic. The question now was whether he'd run or fight. Either way, Monday would bring answers. I sat in the darkness, listening to the house breathe, and waited for whatever came next. Monday morning brought what I'd been anticipating. I'd risen early, driven to Las Vegas Metro Police headquarters before sunrise, and filed my formal report. The detective, a woman named Chen, ironically, had been skeptical at first. You're reporting an attempted murder from 5 days ago? I have medical records documenting my injuries. I have the taxi driver's contact information, Victor Ramos. He'll confirm everything. And I have reason to believe the suspect will escalate. She'd taken my statement, examined the photographs of my torn knees and palms. Called Victor, who remembered me vividly. By the time I left the station, she'd promised to follow up. Now, I sat in my living room, waiting. Rebecca was in the kitchen making breakfast we probably wouldn't eat. The tension in the house was thick enough to swim through. The doorbell rang at 9:15. Through the window, I saw Clyde's rental sedan, a cheap compact, nothing like the Audi he'd sold. Saw him standing at my door, looking like he'd aged a decade in 3 days. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red and desperate. I opened the door, didn't invite him in, but he pushed past anyway. Emmett, please, his voice cracked. I'll tell them everything. The police, the state bar, whoever you want. I'll confess to the money laundering, all of it. Just help me with Colaro. $85,000. I'll pay you back. I swear. I closed the door quietly, positioned myself between him and the hallway where Rebecca would appear. My phone sat on the armrest of my chair, already recording. Had been since I heard his car pull up. No, Clyde. Please. You don't understand what these people will do to me. I understand perfectly. You owe money to dangerous people because you gambled with client funds. You tried to kill me to inherit this house and pay that debt. You used my daughter for years. I kept my voice level, final. You need to answer for your actions. All of them. His face cycled through emotions. Disbelief, anger, panic. You self-righteous old man. He stood, fists clenched. You're destroying me. You think you're so innocent? I could make you disappear. I know people who would... I picked up my phone, turned the screen toward him. The recording indicator pulsed red. Another murder threat, Clyde? The first one was when you pushed me under that taxi on Fremont Street. Now I have this one on record. You're making this very easy for the prosecutors. His eyes fixed on the screen. You were recording? You set me up. This is consequences. I stood, my injured knees protesting but holding. You came to my house and threatened my life. I simply documented it. Rebecca appeared in the doorway. Clyde, just leave. Please just leave. He lunged for my phone instead. His hands grabbed for the device. I sidestepped, insurance investigator reflexes still there, and he stumbled forward, catching himself on the armrest. His fingers closed on empty air. Already uploaded, I said quietly. Marcus has a copy. So does the police department. You just assaulted me while being recorded. You just made everything worse. The realization hit him like cold water. His face went white, then red. He backed toward the door, breathing hard. This isn't over. Yes, I said. It is. You just don't know it yet. He ran, literally ran from my house to his rental car. Tires squealed as he drove away. Rebecca was shaking. I held her, explained calmly what I'd done that morning. The police report, the medical evidence, Victor's statement, the recording I'd just made. It's all documented now, I told her. Everything he's done, everything he is. The call came at 2:17. Mr. Rice? This is Detective Chen, Las Vegas Metro. Clyde Morris is in custody. We picked him up at the Sunset Motel about an hour ago. He's being charged with attempted murder, assault, and making terroristic threats. The State Bar also forwarded their findings to our district attorney. We're adding money laundering and professional misconduct charges. Thank you, Detective. No, sir, thank you. Your documentation made this case. The medical records, the taxi driver's statement, that recording you sent us this morning, it's all solid evidence. Mr. Morris won't make bail on these charges. I hung up and looked at Rebecca. She was sitting on the couch, hands folded, face unreadable. It's over, I said. She nodded slowly. Didn't speak for a long time. Then, when did you know, Dad? When did you realize he was dangerous? I'd worried for a while, but when he pushed me under that taxi, I knew for certain. That wasn't anger. That was calculation. That was someone willing to kill. And you built a case against him, like an investigation. Like an investigation, I agreed. Evidence, documentation, witnesses, everything legal, everything provable. Thank you. Her voice was barely a whisper. For protecting me, even when I didn't see I needed protecting. I sat beside her, put my arm around her shoulders. That's what fathers do. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down on Las Vegas. Somewhere in this city, Clyde Morris sat in a holding cell, facing decades in prison. His career destroyed, his marriage over, his freedom gone. Not through violence, not through revenge in the traditional sense. Through patience, through evidence, through the law. Justice wasn't always swift, but when it came, it was thorough. As evening settled over the city, Rebecca and I sat together on the back terrace. We'd moved outside when the house started feeling too small, too full of echoes from the day's confrontation. The air was cooling finally, that desert transition from brutal heat to comfortable warmth. We had lemonade neither of us drank, comfortable silence neither of us felt pressured to fill. Through the open patio door, I'd left the television on. Background noise, company. The evening news started at 6. Breaking tonight, the anchor's voice carried outside. Las Vegas attorney Clyde Morris arrested on multiple charges including attempted murder. The case has shocked the local legal community. Rebecca's head turned toward the sound. I reached for the remote to turn it off, but she stopped me. No, I need to see this. The screen showed footage from earlier. Clyde being walked into the police station, hands cuffed behind his back. His face was visible, exhausted, defeated, furious. He looked at the cameras with something like hatred. Rebecca's hand trembled slightly. I covered it with my own. The prosecutor appeared on screen next, standing before microphones outside the courthouse. Clark County SIL behind him. The evidence against Mr. Morris is substantial, he said, voice carrying the weight of official authority. We have eyewitness testimony to attempted murder, documented financial crimes involving client trust accounts, and recorded threats made today. Based on the severity and premeditation involved, we're seeking a sentence of 10 to 25 years in prison. 25 years. Clyde could be 70 before he saw freedom again. Rebecca exhaled slowly. I felt the tension leave her shoulders, replaced by something else. Not quite relief. Not quite grief. Something in between. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then checked anyway. Morris no longer a concern. Matter closed. Appreciate the information, no signature, didn't need one. Colaro's people. They'd written off the debt. No point pursuing a man headed to prison. One problem solved by another. Before I could put the phone down, another message arrived. This one from Marcus. All documents finalized and filed. House and trust legally secure. Rebecca fully protected. Well done, my friend. I showed both messages to Rebecca. She read them, nodded slowly. You thought of everything, didn't you? The trust, the documentation, the recordings. You built a fortress around me before I even knew I needed one. I saw who he was, or at least I saw enough to be worried. When he pushed me under that taxi, I knew I had to act. But you didn't fight him directly. You didn't... She searched for words. You didn't become what he was. No, I used the system, evidence, law, justice, the right way. We watched the sun set over Las Vegas, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The casinos in the distance began lighting up, transforming the city into something almost beautiful. You know, Dad, Rebecca said quietly, I always thought you were just a kind man who backed down from conflict, who let people walk over him to keep the peace. I waited, let her find her words. But you taught me something today. Kindness isn't weakness, it's strength that knows when to defend the people you love. You were patient, you gathered evidence, you waited for the right moment, and when it came, you protected me completely. I pulled her closer, chin resting on her head like when she was small. I'll always defend you, sweetheart. Always. That's what fathers do. The sky darkened. Stars appeared, competing with the neon glow of the city. Inside, the news had moved on to other stories, other tragedies, other lives. But ours was settling into peace. Rebecca would heal. She'd rebuild. The legal protections were in place. The house secured, the trust established, her future protected. Clyde would face justice. Real justice. Not vengeance, but consequences. My injuries were healing too. The bandages would come off soon, the scars would remain, physical reminders of the day someone tried to kill me and failed. But I'd survived, more than survived. I'd protected my daughter from years more of manipulation and abuse. I'd stopped a man who was destroying lives through his practice. I'd used every skill I'd learned in 30 years of investigating insurance fraud to build an airtight case. Not through violence, through patience, not through revenge, through justice. Rebecca leaned against my shoulder, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day. I held her, watching the lights of Las Vegas shimmer against the darkening sky. Somewhere in this city, Clyde Morris sat in a cell, finally understanding that underestimating someone is the fastest way to lose to them. He'd seen a 62-year-old man and assumed age meant weakness, assumed quiet meant passive, assumed tolerance meant inability to fight back. He'd learned differently. We sat together as night settled fully, father and daughter, survivor and protected, in the peaceful aftermath of a storm that had passed. The terrace was quiet, the house was safe, the future was secure, justice had been served, and tomorrow we'd begin the work of healing. But tonight, we simply sat together, holding on to each other, holding on to peace, as the last light faded from the desert sky and the stars took over, constant in watching, and finally calm. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.